thing I like about these folks is they are going to tell you exactly the way it is, and so it's coming from the heart, and you're going to believe everything they have to say. So without further ado, Bennett, go ahead and take it away.
Good morning, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning, and appreciate Argen for putting together what will soon be find out the steamed panel or not.
Why is he looking at me?
Yeah, well, I don't know why. Commercial nature of this meeting and this weekend, we just want to make a disclaimer up front. They did pay us to be here, and we all signed up for that, but we didn't know it was just going to be socks. So, but they're nice socks. Very nice. Fit well, they're not going to fall down. So, thank you, Michael.
You got it.
All right, so we're not going to do intros. You have effectively who everybody is on the panel, and you'll learn more about that as they answer the questions, and we're going to break up topics. Some certain panelists will answer certain topics, others will take other opportunities in terms of topics, and then there'll be some universal topics that all of the panelists will address. And our goal is to have about 30 to 35 minutes of Q&A with you. And that's where we think the most value will come in. So we're going to lighten this up a little bit, lighten the mood. So we're going to start with our softball question, not dental related. Maybe. We'll see. So Jeff, what is your favorite snack?
Bulletproof coffee.
All right.
Honey roasted peanuts.
I'm lactose intolerant, so anything with cheese.
All right, look at me like I have to have a favorite, really? Peanuts and beer at a baseball game. With me lately, a Northeastern IPA.
Oh.
Nice. M&M's for me. Nobody asked. All right. So we're going to start out with the full panel. This is for everybody, and just, you can go wherever direction you want. Jeff, and I'm going to start with you. We're just going to go down with each question. We're going to come back and forth and be fair. What's the hottest thing in dentistry from your standpoint?
Do I have to pick one thing? One thing. I think the hottest thing in dentistry is probably I don't know. I think most of us in this room are probably doing a lot of zirconia, right? And although even though zirconia has come a long way, being behind the scenes and getting to see actually the new things that we're learning about the chemistry of the zirconia, and that it's not just a choice between translucency or strength. I think there's new materials coming out. There's only a few of us actually using some of these new materials and processing it correctly. So I think the latest innovations in zirconia is one of the hottest things or most relevant things right now. There's some really exciting, cool, shiny things out there that are kind of almost but not quite there, and we're involved with all that stuff too. But I think some of these new zirconias, like similar to our HD Plus, and there's a few other guys out there that are using it's kind of in between the two, and it's not as simple as just reducing something in the chemistry. It actually has to be processed and handled differently. But if you do it right, you're getting strength and you're getting translucency. And in the past, you guys had to choose either from something that was just kind of dead but really strong and you know it was going to be fine, or it was really pretty but you can only use it on a few parts of the teeth. And so seeing what we're actually able to do now back there, and there's even new stuff that we haven't even got to test yet, new ways to produce it, I think that's one of the hottest things right now.
Sean, go ahead.
Fair enough. I'm going to follow suit with Jeff and just say that the evolution, the continuing evolution of zirconia it's fun to watch. It's fun to see from a laboratory perspective. It's fun to see from a doctor perspective. They too are starting to understand the differences in zirconia through our education, through certainly help from our vendors, Argen. And that evolution is ongoing. It's fun to see. It's the hottest word, if you will, in dentistry or dental laboratory technology is workflow. And the workflow of zirconia is good for labs. It's good for doctors. It's good for patients. So I'm going to follow suit and say zirconia is the hot deal.
3D printing. I'm surprised not any of you guys said that. Yay, I didn't have that one. 3D printing, that's the hottest thing for us right now. The materials, the printers themselves, the workflow that it provides us, I mean, that's definitely the hottest thing for us.
I agree. Just look at the pictures that you see. 3D printing, we have new materials now for things that we've never had before that are more aesthetic, whether it's a different type for RPDs instead of metal, 3D printing our models, going modelless. I think that's where we're at now. And better milling strategies and better milling machines also, I think, are helping us, because I think we'll always have a little bit of 3D printing and milling strategies, additive and subtractive technologies.
I'd agree with a lot of those things. I think the hottest thing, at least from my perspective, is intraoral scanning. Lots and lots of development related to that right now. Some of the newer scanning technology is extremely fast, accurate, making the clinical workflows easy and making our processes streamlined. So a lot of the things that we've spent time doing in the labs now can be integrated in a digital workflow. So I'd have to say that I think digital scanning right now.
For me, I'm not sure if it's the hottest thing, but one of the things that I think is emerging quickly are high-performance polymers, such as Pecton. Materials that mimic the bone in compressive strength, biocompatibility, and the versatility of use that's been used for 20 years in the medical industry is now starting to find its way in those applications in dentistry.
Very good. Panel flew through that one, so that's fantastic. So more time for Q&A later. So Sean and Megan, a couple of things here we want to ask you, just from your standpoint, what are comes from the I guess the most positive trends you're seeing from dental clients in terms of product growth?
Again, I'm gonna go back to zirconia. We practice this, right?
This is the one that you maybe meant to answer the first time.
Right. I'm gonna go back to zirconia. Positive trends in zirconia. It keeps getting better. The industry pushes it. Our doctors push it. Our patients are pushing the envelope on what zirconia is, what materials are going to be best for our industry, and you hear it every day from the technicians in regards to what they're able to do with it, and the materials just keep getting better. So we're appreciative of that, and look forward to, again, the continued evolution of this product.
For us, it's implants. Last year, we had overall we're about 5% growth, but 18% growth in this implant restoration. So for us, that's the most positive growth trend, and I'm sure you see a lot of nods right now. So it's a very hot topic.
We're going to transition a little bit because we got some time that you are doing really well. Except for Jeff, I'm going to have to monitor his time answers. Chris, why don't you take that topic too?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the hottest things, I mean, we see adoption to the digital workflow clinically and how that translates. So we're using a lot of the materials for implant restorations, as you were saying, Megan. We've had good growth in that, and looking at all the applications for all fours, I think Pecton, Peak, and Allure, a lot of these metal-free materials are offering a lot of aesthetic solutions and giving us more options in terms of the ability to be able to restore. Those have been really hot in terms of buzzwords, conversations with dentists, and growth for the lab.
Before we kind of transition to the next topic, I just should have done this at the beginning. How many of you in the audience are owners? How many of you are general managers? All right. Okay. What helps the panel understand kind of our audience and demographics here. So I'm going to broaden it out and ask the whole panel to tackle this since we've got some time. Let's talk about, Jeff, obviously you're going to have a different perspective in terms of visits with the customers, but Larry, let's start with you. Just hiring and training today's technician. What does that look like in your laboratory and some of the things that you're seeing that you need to do now?
Well, for us being a family-owned business, first and foremost, we need to make sure that individual fits within our culture for the values, the integrity, their work ethic. And then for the training, my background before we opened Allure Dental Studio was the vice president of technical training at Microdental. So first thing, especially if they have a non-dental background, or even if they do have a dental background, one of my good friends has written a dental anatomy book called The Personality of Teeth, Steve McGowan up in Washington. So we put them through names, places, and location, terminology, and so that we can speak the same language. And then I've created a training program to start someone off from the beginning to be able to be a dental designer. and then I work through that over a period of weeks. May be familiar, I use the Cintiq tablet, so it's very easy for especially technicians that have a little bit of dental background with either a wax carver or a brush, because the pen is an extension of that instrument, so it's very easy for them to transition. We're not as concerned that we need to look for a gamer or someone like that, or somebody that understands computers, because I just don't think it's as applicable.
Larry, does that mean that you don't hire experienced technicians?
Oh, we do hire experienced technicians, but even that, depending who we are, I still qualify them. Do you know the names, places, and locations instead of like this over there? You know, and they've got to know they have to have that core foundation. I think that's what's missing in the industry today, is because the schools just don't have that foundational foundation to be able to springboard to actually be able to grow.
Chris, what yourself?
Yeah, I would agree in terms of bringing people in. We go through a series of 4 tests. We just from a tactical perspective, we found that bringing groups in and kind of filtering groups by doing some baseline testing has helped us kind of narrow down, because the expense of training people and having high turnover can really play havoc on the profitability of your business and the consistency of your ability to be able to produce. So we do that, and then we actually take our people through SPA, which is PTC, to give them a lot of the same foundation to build on. And one of the things that we've done, and I thought it was a little bit kind of hokey in the beginning, but we started taking people on lab tours as we go through the interview process, and give them the freedom to kind of gravitate to things before we decide where we're going to put them. And what we found, instead of pigeonholing people into areas that we absolutely have to have a need, when people gravitate to things, they generally are more committed to it, and they have a deeper level of commitment to learn it. So that's been a real benefit for us, and it's just simple, easy thing that we kind of found by doing things a little bit different.
I'm going to back up, Larry, in terms of this question for the audience, so they know kind of your perspectives in terms of the need. Larry, how many employees, technicians you have?
The total lab's about 23, so I'd say we have 19 technicians.
Chris, what about yourself?
We have 67 total people.
Gary, so everybody else to answer that too, add that to your equation, if you will.
We have 14 different labs around the country. We have about 200 staff members.
Okay. So we want to tackle the question on training.
Training is what we like to do is all of our labs are digital, 3-shape scanners, so we can talk back and forth. When we have an issue with a laboratory, say a smaller laboratory with 4 or 5 technicians and 2 people want to take off at the same time, very difficult. Now we just send it to a different laboratory. We have some centers of excellence as far as where our carbon printers are located. It's in one laboratory. We do the bulk of our milling in another laboratory, so we can have numerous people trained to work the mill, nest, those type of things, as opposed to just one main person and then somebody that's doing something else kind of learns. So we utilize our electronics very, very heavily. And for us to train, we're in a good position because we have labs all over the country, and if some lab knows another person, it's always that way. The ads really don't work too well. We know what the deal is, but when we have other staff members that say, I enjoy working at this lab, why don't you come and interview? And here's what we have. And we utilize, we'll talk later, but we utilize some other folks to do some designing and those type of things for us.
And Gary, you and Sean are chair and vice chair of the Foundation for Dental Laboratory Technology. Are you using any of those tools for your team?
Yes, we do. And we appreciate it. If anyone out here has donated to the foundation, we do appreciate it. Argen is a very big supporter of the foundation. We have all types of grants, pillar scholarships if folks want to be CDTs, it'll pay for that test. We have Keystone grants for our school. We have Fulcrum grants for accomplished technicians if you want to go to a Spear or a Coyce, your choice. So we utilize that a lot for our staff to help train and educate.
Thank you. What about yourself?
So we've got about 60 employees, and it's a struggle to find qualified dental technicians up in our area. We're in the Seattle, Washington area. Craigslist and referrals, gosh, that sounds like a dream. I wish we could live by that. But we found that we bring in entry-level folks and we train them up through the PTC program. It's embarrassing because we still have the VHS PTC system, so we just plug it in and
It's one step
here we
above
go.
David.
Here we go. Yeah. But I have a question for you, Chris. When you are testing people, you said you kind of test them, do an intro test. What kind of testing are you using?
So there's a reading comprehension. We actually use Jim Gladwell shared a math test with us just as a baseline. And then we have some wire bending and carving exercises that we put technicians through too. So
I think I just got fired as moderator. Megan took over.
Sorry.
She's much better looking, so.
We all know that.
I don't know why you're surprised. It happens at every event.
We'll talk later. All right, so Sean will fix up.
Sean Siegel, Anchorage, Alaska. We have 18 total people. Hiring and training folks is probably the steepest challenge that I know that I have. It is a lot of OJT. It's a lot of relying. I'll go back to this. It's a lot of relying on our vendors for the training that they're able to supply. In regards to the Foundation for Dental Laboratory Technology, we're certainly happy to support and look for folks that come out of these programs and that have gravitated towards the grants and the scholarships. Those are the folks that are showing that they want to be in this industry and that they have a desire to move forward. I know that our latest hire came from the school in Indiana and out of Brooks program, and super beneficial. These are folks that when they arrive at your laboratories and they have a very good baseline understanding of dental laboratory technology, and we're able to put them into a production atmosphere and move them forward along those lines. It is a challenge. If you're challenged in Seattle, Washington with a couple million people, I'm really challenged in Alaska with less than 1 million people in the entire state. So
is that the only reason you're challenged?
We won't go there
today.
What's the question?
Time allows. All right, so Jeff, you see it internal with your team and certainly internal with customers that.
Sure. One where you guys know we're a really fast digital center, so we're hiring all very similar to the same type of people that all the labs are hiring. And my job is obviously bringing in a lot of new business units, and sometimes that's the hardest part. I'm bringing in a whole business unit, and there may or may not be a core competency downstairs. So we've got 350 employees down there, who may or may not have done a digital denture or any dentures, right? So it's always difficult trying to find that. We've got some lab schools up at LA and things like that, but I'd say I'll echo the first thing that Larry said. It's the number one thing is they have to be a cultural fit, and we're a family company. We're a big company though, and we're starting to we try to be organized like a big company, but act small. So you still get that Argen family feel when you're there. It's a flat organization, so you see a lot of us and a lot of the management, and Anton's down on the floor, and he knows everybody's name, and I think that's really important as far as just keeping everyone engaged. We a lot of people we have to kind of ground up training, and we've used a combination of things like PTC, right? But then we've actually had to create a really good training program and try to and also a cross training program. So when we get someone and we've got a lot of positions where it's not going to be fun for very long. You might start off finishing selective laser melting, and there's thousands of those happening a day. And we try to, once someone becomes proficient with a handpiece and maybe doing something like that, give them opportunities to move into things that they're interested in. But making sure those are cultural fit, making sure that we do a lot of cross training. And then it's interesting too, I don't believe that the video game guy is really the best guy for 3Shape anymore. I think we needed that because it was a computer sitting on the desk and people just didn't even know how to find a file, right? And the guy who was playing with computers knew how to find a file. You really got to have someone who knows dentistry, right? And just has the aptitude to learn those things. And so there's certain aptitude tests that we do. If we're bringing in management, we have a couple We have a couple standardized tests like the Watson and Glazier. I think one called the Berkman that we do, and some of them aren't cheap, but they are very good at understanding someone's decision-making skills, understanding what their personality type is, and knowing if you've also done that with other people and they're going to be working with those people, especially at a management level, that they're going to fit in. And we'll do the same thing where we do the tour, and we really allow that person to kind of, if they're interested in something, and they want to go somewhere, we will try to create the pathway for them to go there.
And as we know, well, you folks don't know, but the foundation is in the process of getting out a training manual. It's a video, and it goes from start to finish, similar to a PTC type. And we've been working on that for over a year right now. We'll introduce it as different modules, but it's for a basic. This is not going to take it from step A to a CDT test, okay? It's going to give them the basics. It has all the terminology in there, and we all know you have to know fit, form, and function. Right? We're all using the same software, we're using the same libraries per se, but you need to know fit, form, and function, because it'll put it in there, it'll give you a proposal, but we all know that you need to change that. But the foundation is working very hard, again, because of the generosity of the donors, to put this type of program out, because we know there's a need. The schools are unfortunately closing. Is it 14 now? 15? 13 closed, accredited schools. So that will be, this year we'll start introducing the modules free of charge for NADL members.
As opposed to the audience or owners and managers, let's go a little bit further on this workforce issue in terms of culture. Jeff hit that topic. Every industry sector is seeing, certainly over the next 10 years, workforce shortage issues in terms of qualified workers. How much is culture a model in terms of what you're focusing on right now in terms of recruitment and retention?
Well, for us, it's paramount. As they say, you get one bad apple in the bunch. We like to make sure that obviously we have to have production, we have to be profitable, but we want it to be a nice place to work. We want to have nice laboratories. We don't want to have some filthy laboratory and those type of things where people dread getting up in the morning. So, and we want to treat, our team members like family. And we try and do that at all of our laboratories. Our business model is not outsourcing overseas. We're a local business. We all know we are dependent on our relationships. And it doesn't matter if you're a 4-person laboratory or a 400-person laboratory. Our relationships with our staff, or as we call them, our team members, and then with our clients, so that we always have issues. I mean, I don't know about anybody, but we have a remake every once in a while, and it's how you handle it is what we try and teach our staff. We'll take care of it, doctor. Doctor asks for something out of the ordinary, we take care of it. They thank you. I'll always say to them, don't worry about it. We work together as a team, because we may have a problem one time, and I may have to call you, doctor, and say, we have an issue with this. So we like to make sure that we have not only from the lab to the doctor, but internal also, that we all know that let's work together, let's have a good attitude, treat people with respect.
Anybody else want to tackle it?
I think from our perspective, one of the things that we've learned over a lot of years is that in job interviews, we try to do a lot more listening than we do talking, and doing a little bit of background on prior history with different companies and the cultures that those companies have, trying to understand more about that can kind of give you some insight into someone's tenure in those organizations and how they adapt, and then hearing where they came from and what they've done. I think that, Larry, well said in terms of being able to nail culture, but I think people will tell you whether they're going to fit if you just listen, right?
Very good. We're going to transition to Chris and Gary on this topic. Let's talk about DSOs. It's a big topic for everybody, in terms of whether you're working with them or you're not. It's definitely something that's here to stay and continues to grow in terms of the clinical side. So both of you work with different types of DSOs. What does that look like? What's the process in terms of acquiring the business, keeping the business, and some of the things that in terms of impacts on production, workflows, those types of things?
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations there. And I think it is a big opportunity, and you have to look at it a little bit differently from our perspective. the way that you sell to those organizations is different. The level of service that you have to give them is different. We started this early on by dealing with some VA hospitals, and the VAs were a good segue into that part of the market because you still have clinical folks that are making decisions primarily. Okay, so they're giving a lot of valuable feedback to contracting officers. What can be a challenge with some of the bigger DSOs is that the decision making becomes centralized, and a lot of times it's not people with clinical backgrounds that are making decisions. So, but the information that is, I guess the realities at the clinical level are filtering up to the decision makers. So what we found is that we have to have a support layer in there to help the clinician level to manage that. And so you've got top side and bottom side pressure on that, right? They're commanding lower prices because of the volume, and you're having to put more in terms of cost in to help support the business. So, we look at a lot of different options. I mean, we focused for 1.5 years on trying to better products and become more lean, to find ways to take costs out of the equation to be able to effectively compete. We look at all options in terms of global competition to be able to kind of meet the demands. So I think as long as you're willing to kind of take a comprehensive look, it can be a good place to be. It's certainly not for everybody. We contemplated for a long time whether we really wanted to be committed to that market. And I'm interested to hear what Gary's take is on this, but that's where we're sitting.
We deal with several DSOs, but small. And we're talking about a group of 1 or 2 dentists that may have 6 or 7 offices. We don't look at the 200, 300, 400, the Heartlands, those type of things. We're not. That's not our business model. But we're dealing with, excuse me, as opposed to a Heartland where you're dealing with a CPA, you may never talk to a doctor per se. We deal with 4 or 5 doctors that have 7, 8 different dental practices. They're kind of a mini DSO. We don't have any contracts because, as Chris and I were talking this week, you get a contract, and January 1st that contract's up, they want to renegotiate. And we know they don't want to say, you're going to keep us at a 10% price increase this year? Those type of things. So we want an ongoing relationship with them, and we're big on relationships, making sure that the doctors know who we are, those type of things. So we have 4 or 5 different mini DSOs, if you want to call them. And again, we make sure that we're as lean as possible on some of the things like a zirconia crown. A one-shade monolithic crown this is what you're going to get this price. Kind of like a loss leader. You go in a grocery store and they've got hamburger for 99 cents. It's always in the back of the store because you're not going to walk back there, put that in your cart and leave. So we look at the other things, implants, the things that we can really make some a good profit on. But they come in and here's our price on this product, doctor. But our other prices are really about what our regular prices, and it works pretty well for the most part. We don't get into the big medical assistance clinics, those type of things, because we're not. Excuse me. We send our frameworks out because that's a lot of RPD work. So we send those out. We don't do those in-house. We can't really have a savings on those type of things. So that's how we work with the mini DSOs. Is we work with 4 offices here, 5 offices there, and it seems to work a lot better because you can still talk to the clinician. And the clinicians still want to make sure that they're getting a fairly good product.
We're starting to work with larger practices, again, doctors that are really business oriented with multiple offices and growing. My biggest concern is receivables. It doesn't take very long for those guys to get a really big bill up with you. And for a small laboratory, I mean, cash flow is everything. So how do you handle that?
What we do in our presentation, this is your fee when you pay. We'll start at net 30, then we'll go to net 45 or net 60, but here's your fee. If we don't get it in that time, that fee goes up to here. So they know, if you're charging them $1 for a crown, net 30, and they pay you net 60, it's going to be $2 a crown, $3. And that's all up front so that they understand it, because you're right. I think the lab sometimes might be the last place to get paid.
One thing that makes me nervous is a new doctor that comes to the practice, all of a sudden he wants to give you a boatload of work and switch immediately. So to me, that's kind of a red flag. Did you run up the bill with 2 or 3 other labs, and now I'm the next guy in line.
And years ago, it used to be, okay, Megan, I got this guy that called me with a boatload of work. Right now, we're global, so we have no idea
Yeah.
where they're sending their work. Fair enough.
Do you run credit checks on any of the practices, or?
We do, on the larger practices, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of do the same thing on, and Burt and Associates has been awesome in terms of being able to do a little bit of background research on some new practices. We try to do a lot of homework on the front end. So our approach is, I had a group, this was 2 or 3 weeks ago, want to start sending cases, and while part of me said, hey, listen, I want to go there, meet people, talk about how we can best fit in what they're trying to do. Because it's a lot more, in our opinion, than just providing crowns or dentures or partials. The relationship and how we can help them run better businesses, help grow their top line, and grow the value that they're building in their organization. Because at the end of the day, most of these guys, as they build these, are trying to position them to sell them, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're most of them are starting with the end in mind, and each of their vendor partners need to be able to help them grow additional value in the organization. So we're trying, what we've learned, and I have a guy that's kind of focused on this now. He's committed to groups, is how do we do that? How do we best do that? I think information sharing has been really valuable. Tom Dalton talked about that yesterday at Cal, and the information that all of us as lab owners and operators have that those clinical operators could benefit from knowing in an aggregate sense, right? I mean, it's not the problem of the moment, but what are the issues that are happening between the clinic and the lab? On a bigger scale, over a 30, 60, 90-day window. I mean, and then how do you tackle that? How can we assist in helping make those issues minimized or go away? Those are the things that we're looking at. So it's a different approach. I mean, when you've got a single dentist in an office, I mean, I think the problems can be different, but they're managed a lot differently as well. So those are just the things that we see at this point.
Chris, do you have any dedicated staff that works just on this DSO or that DSO, or like you said?
Are you talking
internal
production?
No, management staff that handles the accounting, everything except technical.
Yeah, so we don't currently, but we believe that we're going to need that in the future because, again, the needs are different, and we need to be able to match that and be the right partners. So,
I mean, Chris, you gave us a good segue to our next topic. It's going to have Jeff, Sean, and Larry tackle this one. Let's talk about supplier-vendor partnerships. So strategic partnerships with vendors obviously have always been important, but probably even more important today. So each of you kind of address that, what you look for, what's the due diligence that you do. If it's not, let's say it's a new partner that you haven't worked with before, what are you looking at? What kind of questions are you asking? And then certainly your existing partners, how are those relationships different than they were 10 years ago?
So I'll segue from what Chris was just visiting about there as well, and that is, we look at our doctors are our clients, of course, right? And we're their vendor, just as Argen is our vendor as a laboratory, and it's always exciting to get a call from a potential new client. It's disappointing if somebody calls and simply asks for a price list. And what they're missing is what we all hope to offer from our businesses, and that is we are resources, right? We'd like to be a member of your team, and so I take that seriously in terms of who we look at as our vendors and who are our partners, and when we do that. And I'll use Argen as an example. I'll use Carbon as an example. I don't have a problem with mentioning names, but these are folks that are true partners. They have an interest in what we're doing. They have an interest in helping us grow. They have an interest in being there. From a concierge, and I'll use the word too, a concierge service. And that's what we look for. We have businesses to run. We have people to support. We have staff to run. And when we as business owners have the opportunity to work with folks that make our jobs easier along those lines, and they too are a resource, it really helps in growing our businesses. It allows us to, or maintain our businesses for that matter. And it allows us to focus on, the quality, the relationships that we're able to build with our clients. So from that standpoint, our vendors have to be everything that they promise us that they're going to be.
So, Jeff, in your career, you've been on both sides of the fence. But what do you share with customers in terms of the things that they need to do in terms of due diligence?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, our goal is to have a really heavy service model, right? We realize that, and honestly, we've evolved. We've learned this. We had very few technical support staff and customer care at Argen when we were just an alloy company, because everybody's been casting and playing with alloy for hundreds of years, and they pretty much, unless there was some new alloy out there that gave them a little bit of trouble, we didn't have to have a lot of support. But as we've delved into pretty much every technology that everybody else is playing with, in the beginning we thought, oh, well, we got these smart engineers and we can handle all this kind of stuff. And so as we brought technology in, we learned very quickly, even with the capable people and PhDs and engineers and guys that can build these things themselves, at the end of the day, you have to be working with someone who's committed to making sure your business is up and running. And that's the way we looked at it. When we first got into 3Shape and we were supporting actually the digital business, we said, well, we don't want to sell a device right now. We don't want to sell equipment yet. We're really looking at just providing that service. And very quickly, we were supporting everybody's 3Shape problems because we realized that there wasn't great support at the time. And we realized that if we weren't supporting that, they couldn't send us the work that they wanted to send in. So, and that evolves over time. Like, people use that word partner a lot, but I truly believe in it. There's so much happening now. Innovation is so fast. You cannot do everything yourself. You can do anything, but you can't do everything yourself. And one thing I've learned on being on the other side of the vendor relationship, not the vendor, but the customer, is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if you're not exactly happy, you should be vocal, you should reach out, but you should also be looking for a vendor that doesn't make you do that. That they're constantly like, hey, how's it going? What's happening? And don't just say fine because you're afraid that they don't want to hear something. You got to tell us exactly what's going on. I absolutely enjoy when people say, man, I really like this, but this is just not working this way. We're the type of company that we are, that fuels our innovation. So I think that's really, really important. But nowadays, like when we bring in a new technology, and even if it's something outside dental, the biggest part of that is we're usually finding technology from a variety of vendors that will work for us. And sometimes it's technology that's more affordable, and it's, especially when we're trying to manage costs, it's very tempting to go chase that. But at the end of the day, it's got to be someone that's committed to being a partner. And if we say, hey, look, the way you have something set up right now in this nice little box, that's great, but it's not really what we need to take this thing to the next level. We look for someone that we know for sure is going to throw resources at it and are committed to helping us with those kind of things. And that's where Argen's model is going. And I don't know if anybody got to see Anton speak at Cal Labs yesterday, but if you where we think the laboratory business is going, it's going to be all about communication. And it's how you communicate with your doctor, how you communicate with your vendors, because we're all business partners if you think about it. You can't deliver that implant if I don't mill it out good and 3Shape scanner doesn't take that scan well. And if we're not coordinated, integrated, and completely understanding how we can all work together, you're going to have strange bottlenecks, and it's just going to either look like you don't have it together or that you gave someone some bad advice or delivering a bad product. And so there's a lot of ways to do things. There's a lot of ways to go shopping for a roll of paper towels. I like to do it on Amazon because it's easy, it's integrated, and I can see everything. And so as a vendor, our goal is to make it easy and continue to add value. And the best way we do that is feedback and what is it that people really want.
So Larry, you obviously come from a micro with large business model, in terms of lots of vendors and partnerships we had, and now we're just in a smaller setting now. Have you approached the vendor partner relationships differently in terms of what you're looking for and how you evaluate the success and performance of those relationships?
Yes, as most of our relationships, speaking with it's a scanner or technology or a mill or a printer, a lot of the vendors, they all sell the same things. There's tons of people selling roll-ins or this printer or that printer, and it's really easy to get you to do the sale, but what's really important and what I look at is the post-sale support, technical support, because we all know, as much as I love 3Shape, between version releases, they always don't work. Or with iOS files, they always don't match up. And so one of the reasons I chose Argen was because they have a deep technical bench that when I can call, I get somebody that's competent and they stay with me and they work through it till the very end. And if they don't have the answer, then they have other colleagues that they'll hand it off to because maybe they have more expertise in implant studio or with bars or whatnot. So for me, this is my last reseller or vendor that I'm going to use for 3Shape is Argen. I've gotten burned 2 other times as I've transferred that dongle. But it's absolutely critical. And then conversely, now when we go into to the relationships with our accounts, as more of those doctors are using iOS scans, again, it's the same thing. The vendor will sell them a scanner. They'll get maybe a half a day. They don't even get the 2 days that they're promised, and then they leave, and then they don't know how to use the technology. So what I'm trying to do is educate myself clinically on how to use those clinical tools so that I can go in and help them use that tool so that they can get the return on their investments and then utilize it every day. And so then I'm thought of more as a true partner because I help them grow and utilize that technology to the benefit of the practice like they were told when they bought it. So the labs that can help the clinical side as the technology evolves and it becomes more integrated into the practice, I think those labs will have a significant advantage over other labs that don't.
Chris and Gary, let's talk about insourcing versus outsourcing. How do you, obviously, Gary, we're a small lab. Now you're part of a network, if you will. Chris, you've consistently grown Burdette over the years. How do you look at that insource, outsource, making that decision-making process?
What we do, our business model is we keep everything in the U.S. and we outsource, as we call it, to other laboratories. We have centers of excellence that do billing because, as I said before, it's easier to train 2 or 3 people at one laboratory instead of one over here, and then, we're going to train Megan to do this, and, the rover, as we say, you've got 19 different things that you're in charge of. So we use, we want to try and recession-proof our business also. I think since 1900, there's been about 37 different recessions. And we're in a growth model now. Well, what goes up will come down at some point. And the old way of doing things is we'd hire more people. We'd hire more people. We'd hire more people. Then that recession hits. And either you say, I have to terminate some folks, let some folks go, or what's the alternative? You just keep paying people, or everybody is on reduced wages and those things. So we utilize Argen. Of our 14 laboratories, we have approximately 4 labs that actually cast anymore. So if we have some locators or those cases, we send it to a laboratory that will do that for us. Argen, we use SLM copings all the time. The laboratory where I'm housed out of St. Paul area, we haven't cast in 3 years. Those type of things. So you're talking about partners that will help you. We will look for different vendors that will come in and train our staff, help train our staff. Marlon, whose birthday is Monday, I believe, and Mr. Siegel's also. Yeah, mine's today. I'm 196. But we'll ask if we have an issue or when we bring a new laboratory on, we will look and we'll say, okay, does it make sense for us to wax and cast and finish? Does it do that? Now, we can utilize those folks somewhere else. Of the 14 labs that we have, we've only not hired 2 staff members out of all 14 labs that we've integrated. So we don't come in and say, you 7 folks right here, you don't have a job any longer. We're going to take your expertise and how do we put it in a different department? We just acquired a lab in Vermont, and it's Crown and Bridge, and we want to bring in removable. And I had 3 technicians come up to me and say, I'd like to learn dentures. I'd like to do this. So we like to make sure that when we go into a laboratory, we look and say, how can this fit not only culture of staff, but what they're doing also. You know, we don't look at laboratories that are charging $30 a unit or those type of things for our business model. So we like to make sure that with our group, we help each other out. We'll send it here, send it there. Where's our expertise?
If I could just go back to one thing before on the vendor relation side of things. One of the things that we found very valuable over the last few years particularly is a greater level of accountability to conversions on different products. And what I mean by that is when we get approached and we evaluate and are looking to make a decision on whether we're going to switch a product, we're looking for a plan on how we're going to grow that. And that really deepens the level of partnership when you have pen on paper, or in a lot of cases it's typing on Word, but having a document to kind of come home to with set goals and objectives and timeframes in which you're going to evaluate the implementation and the growth of the products. We found that we have a lot more success as a company in transitions, and I think both parties end up happier at the end of the day when we do that, as opposed to when we don't. So, in terms of insourcing and outsourcing, I think there are 2 things that we look at. They're strategic or financial, and we've done a little bit of both. An example of a strategic outsourcing maybe 2 things would be some international partnership on some of the DSO business where we're faced with low cost and low price points. Trying to find the fit there. Another maybe outsourcing some design services to full contour, and not necessarily because of cost. It may be either scaling or it could be turnaround time. So those guys have some operational differences from us in terms of us having to have 2 or 3 shifts. We could source that stuff to them, and they're doing the stuff overnight. So those would be some examples of some strategic outsourcing. In terms of the financial piece, we back in 1999, 2000 timeframe, we did a full evaluation of all the products in our business, and we did some costing, and it was really our first run at it. But we had to make some decisions. We had to cut some products to find the right outsourcing partners if we weren't making the right gross profit. And I think one thing that I've heard pretty consistently over the last year is one thing that is imperative in our businesses is we need to know what it costs us to make the products that we sell. We got to study that, we've got to monitor it, and we've got to manage it, because at the end of the day, whether it's a DSO or a private practitioner, I think the price pressures probably will continue, right? And it'll be a challenge that we can all meet, but we've got to understand what it costs us to do those things. So finding ways to be able to take cost out is important. But as we evaluated those, if we weren't making the gross margin that we needed to make, we found sourcing partners that we may be able to earn a similar margin and have our people that were in those departments redeployed into higher growth, higher profit areas in the lab. So that's how we approach the in-source versus outsource.
A couple of polling questions, and we're going to transition to a full panel question. How many of you have 3D printers, the laboratory panels? More than one brand? Okay. And then as far as chairside services, how many of you have integrated chairside services in terms of a business niche? Okay. All right, so let's just transition to this question. Emerging business models, maybe something you already have in progress or what you see coming down the pipe in the next 2 to 3 years for your business or the industry at large. What do you see the next iteration of growth for laboratories?
I'll take I really think it's the opportunity to do 3D printed dentures. It's going to be optimum, and we'll optimize that as long as we continue to see growth and evolution in terms of the materials. I think it's a market that's going to be wide open. I think there's lots of literally fun stuff to do with digital dentures, and the opportunities that it'll afford the end user, our patients. I think it'll be fun for offices, doctors to offer digital dentures from the standpoint of maybe even a couple different versions of a denture, and I think it'll continue to grow.
What's the most exciting about that for you? So just the fun aspect, or is there a price point that digital dentures?
Well, he's a fun guy, you know that.
Thank you.
Like the blue denture would.
No. Well, those of you that saw the presentation in Vegas about the gentleman that talked about the music industry and all that, I really do believe that there's a ton of opportunity in digital dentures in regards to what patients are looking for. I mean, I think you'll be able to give a patient an option of their standard, if you will, regular denture, and then they're going out to disco denture. You know what I mean?
You dated yourself really.
Hey, he was at one last night.
It's my birthday on Monday.
It's on Facebook. I saw it.
I think digitally designed 3D printed dentures. They will be affordable enough that we'll be able to offer something to patients that has
Like fashion accessories.
well, potentially that, but just yet to be offered in the industry. I think there'll be ease of use that I see as well, and the ability to house this information for patients and doctors to retrieve that at a later time. I just see that as a true advantage. It's a change in the industry. It really is.
I think we'll see the business model of digital dentures change to where you got this denture and you did everything you can to make it work for as long as you can. You went in for relines and things like that. And there's, I think, big opportunities there. I would agree. One is, I think, that when this matures, it's going to create a lot more access to care. There's too many people out there right now that don't even have the ability to get the cheapest denture. And so that price can come down. The ease in which we can find those people and get them to a point to where we can offer them a digital denture. I think there's some cool programs that run out of Phoenix, doing those things. And then that business model where, it was really expensive and there was all this labor built into making this thing, and you're going to be able to deliver a pretty darn good denture and then replace it every so often or project, and when that guy has to come in for a quick little scan, and you use the old thing and the new scan, and very quickly he's got the same denture with the same bite but adjusted to the bone loss that he has. So those business models will change, and kind of going back to what do we got to do, so if we stay ahead of that and we're able to communicate those things, and you're able to communicate those things to the dentist, that's the increased value, because these things are everywhere, the ads are everywhere, and everybody's looking, to make sense out of those things. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities for the lab is to really stay ahead of it, and you're that resource, because most doctors don't know, they're confused.
I think with the technology and the being able to reproduce the first version and then have a copy, we do a lot of immediate load, full arch, and I kind of see with some of the new materials out and the availability to reproduce these things once we've made it once, kind of like contact lenses. Before you had one set, but instead of worrying that you're going to have a material that's going to last 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, we may be able to design it and produce it, and maybe every year you come in and you just swap one out. Maybe you wore it down, but you got back to the normal, and it just becomes really affordable. Again, with the dentures, same thing. I also think pre-visualization for the patient, so they actually see the outcomes before we pull the trigger and we make something, and then it's like, that's not what I was looking for. So I know with 3Shape, they have the app on 3Shape Communicate to do smile design, and they get that buy-in before they even make the commitment. So I think that connectivity between the whole team, but integrating the patient into that ecosystem is going to be key.
And I think, we're going to be dependent on, from our clients, for more education, more and more education in what works. We do that all the time now, but we really focus on seminars for our doctors, whether it's a product we use or not. but just to expose them to what's going on. Digital is going to just get better. I think we're at a point right now with digital dentures that we were 10 years ago with zirconia. The software will continue to evolve. The materials will evolve. And then who are you going to partner with? That's the big thing. Are you looking at something lowest price from someone you don't know that just came in the market? Because you know we're going to have issues.
Yep.
And how do you correct those issues? We've all been in this business long enough to know that sometimes cheap is not the way to go. So how do we partner again with quality companies that will stand behind us and work with us? And I really think what Larry said, we're trying to go out to the patient also. We help our doctors market to the patients because without them, it doesn't matter. We can have as many clients as we want if they don't have the business. So aligners, clear aligners, we're doing clear aligners right now, and it is just taking off. We started in January, and it is just taking off with clear aligners. So I think for a laboratory, expand your horizons. Look and see what a dentist sells to his patients. Excuse me, they don't sell anything, I know. What a dentist provides to their patients and see how you can get into that business model and help the dentist. We have certified triage trainers in our group. And so who's the first person the doctor calls when they're trying to scan? It's not the provider of the scanner, it's the lab. So we work with different manufacturers to be certified trainers and to be trained and talk to them and go out and show them how to use it properly. Those type of things. So that helps a lot. Again, it's a relationship business.
Solution provider.
Exactly.
I do think that we follow in the footsteps of our vendors who have adapted to fit what we need. I think that's what we have to be looking for in the future, is really adapting ourselves to fit what our clients are going to need. So if that's more access to education, if that's being a technical resource for their iOS scanners, that's kind of the next phase that we need to be really cognizant about.
I think from my perspective, we feel like we're becoming more of a sales organization. And not in a cheesy selling way, but in a connection way. So in terms of understanding our customers at a deeper level, what they need, as that continues to develop. Someone said solutions provider, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's the position we're in. So when I first started in the business 24 years ago, we did things a certain way and we sold them to our customers. What we do now is a lot more listening and trying to find the ways that we can best fit and deliver value into their workflows. And that can mean a lot of different things, right? So we have to be open-minded and flexible. I share with our team every day. I mean, that's the key to us getting where we want to go, is being open-minded and flexible, not being regimented as to this is what I do and how I do it. We've got to be willing to adapt to the changing needs of our customers. So,
Yeah, adaptability is a big, adapt and evolve.
Good. All right, so it's your turn. I think we've got mics for this audience, so people will be able to hear the acoustics in here. So if you've got a question, just show your hand. So is it for the whole panel or a particular panel?
The whole panel, mostly the people who are lab owners, the smaller labs. With many of the labs sending many of the doctors sending their work to mega labs, which turn out to be nothing more than overseas shipping centers. And many of our vendors competing directly with us for lab services and even putting mills in the dentist office. How is a small lab, small medium-sized lab, without a clear path for ROI and new equipment, and other than the things we already talked about, like going lean, how are you supposed to survive?
Well, we have labs that have 2 people. We have labs that have 45 people. And we'll look at, let's say you're a 4-person laboratory and they say, well, I can't afford digital technology. Well, I think you can't afford not to do it. So you can get a scanner.
So we're already in digital.
Yep. Well, you can, if you're saying you were talking about equipment, what vendor can you use, like Argen, to mill your copings for you, or you mill your full contour?
We just need to work from the dentist, and the dentists are sending it to the $75 crown.
Well, that's the thing. Where's your niche?
Using their service.
You got to look and see where your niche is. If your niche is $350 crowns, then I think you need to market to different groups. If your niche is a $90 crown, then you need to look and say, well, maybe the small DSO or something those type of things. And that's what it's all about. We have to bring work into us. We have to sell, folks. We can't say that, we're making this beautiful restoration, we're in the medical device industry. That's fine, but we still have to go out and find out where the doctors are. How do you do it? Do you do it by mass mailing? Do you do it with seminars? Do you do it by knocking on the door? Do you do it by hitting up your current clients for referrals? I think the latest is 3.1 laboratories a doctor uses. So when I go into a doctor, I don't try and get all their work. I try and get maybe, instead of 3.1, they'll use 2.1 laboratories. So send me a little more of your work. That's what we look at.
For me, you've got to understand who you are and who you are and what you want to do. You can't worry about the other labs, that this guy's $70 or $80. So that goes back to what you're saying. You've got to know your costs. You've got to know roll up all the costs associated that it takes to not only produce that restoration, factor in your remakes, and how much profit do you want to make. You've got to have that clear line of where you know exactly where you stand and not resist the temptation for large work. And if you dip below that line, you're going to be losing money. That's the first thing. The other thing is you've got to have like you said, you got to have a niche. For us, it's implants and all on four. So in our area, we're known as the go-to chairside immediate load laboratory. That's our niche that we use as a springboard, that once we're in the clinical situation doing our surgeries, we use that opportunity to cross-sell the laboratory for our other products. Because we're gloved up, we've got gowns on, we're blood brothers. So that takes our relationship with them to a whole nother level, because a lot of these doctors have never done a conversion before, and we lead them through that process. And that separates us from the other labs that choose or not to choose to do those type of restorations. So it's your own identity of what you want to be and who you want to be and who you want to work with. And you have to have the discipline to make sure that you don't get tempted by a large hanging fruit, that you have a big practice and, so that's.
But before anybody else responds to the gentleman's question, how many of you have clients that have chairside systems? Anybody? So Sean, you don't have any that have chairside?
Yeah, there's folks that use them. Keep in mind, they can't do everything and be the answer or the resource for when they can't.
To that question, those of you that have, which is basically all of you, now, obviously, the relationships are longer, depending on the duration of your relationship with your practices. But how much of that business have you been able to recoup over the years? Have you been able to retain them, but just lose pieces of the puzzle, if you will?
Well, I'll say our experience early on is probably a lot like most labs. When chairside started to take off, we really became somewhat offended when our customers left and started doing chairside milling. What we've learned over the years, though, is that most of those customers go away initially, maybe for 18 months to 24 months, but they have a greater level of commitment to selling dentistry, right or wrong, and they come back better clinicians and with more volume. Now, some of the single stuff never comes back, but the more complex stuff, they figure out what they want to utilize the technology for. And so because of that, we now kind of embrace it, so when customers want to go that route, we don't ever want to try to push them there, but when they go there, we want to try to support them, because if we can help them be successful in a steep financial endeavor like that, for them, it's $150,000, plus it's a cultural change in their practices. So that's a big thing to pull off. If we can help them be successful in that way, we still are the lab resource for them. And we're fully committed to digital, so we can run side by side on this path, right? It's not different directions like it used to be. That's our taking.
And I'm with you also. And now as the price of crowns have come down, because we're using mostly all ceramic, they're looking, saying, my ROI is not really that great. It takes my time, and Marlon was my designer, and he left, so what do I do? We get the aesthetic wise, we get that back after 6-7 months, because they look and they say, yeah, I'm not a good designer. I'm not this. So I'm with you, Chris. We occur after the initial shock that you want to go and burn the office down. But after that initial shock, well, how can we continue to do work with you? Implants and those type of things. So it's again, just like us, when we change a vendor, Or we go from, doing a high PFM market, now we're doing ceramics, that vendor lost the business. Do they continue to be working with us in those type of things? How can we work it? So I don't see it any different from our end to the doctor or our end to the vendor.
If we know ahead of time they're going to get involved with in-house milling or in-house production, if we're early on that conversation, we try to let them know up front exactly what you're getting into. Because as we all know, the technology doesn't want to cooperate, whether it's the software, the scanner, or the mills especially. Do they have the right staff? And then break down what is the true cost of that crown, because you were told you're going to eliminate your lab bill, and instead of fill in the blank $90, $100, it's if you don't reach a certain volume, those crowns and everything you invested in, you're now $200, $250.
It's usually more.
And usually a lot more. So we have a spreadsheet that we can kind of plug in. Okay, well, here's your investment, what's your production, and then we, just like we do for our own products, and when you get to the end, if you don't hit this mark, these crowns are going to cost you $400 a piece. And the risk to your practice when you go all in on that, with the assistants that are now designers and finishing their Emax crowns and staining and glazing, let's now talk about the quality. Is that something you really want to do with your practice? If they do, we're here to support you when you need it, and we'll probably get those bigger cases they can't do, and then eventually it will come back, but they'll remember, hey, they really tried to do me right going in, and they're the right fit for us.
Larry, have you ever brought them into your lab, or anyone ever brought them into a lab? Because we bring them to the lab and say, okay, here, you sit and design. We'll work with design. Oh, let's mill it now. Let's, we do the steps. Because I think that for the most part, they're kind of the techno geeks that want to do this, right? I love this. Bring them in and show them. Oh, wait, no, it's just easy, they said. No, here, now you design it, and we'll give them a couple tough cases. Design it, bring your staff in. It kind of, that shine comes off the apple.
Set them up for failure.
I didn't say that.
I said it. All right. We had a question over here, so then we'll come back around.
Bennett, I'm going to try and monopolize the questions for as long as you'll allow me, because I got a bunch.
Thank you, Senator. Everyone else.
So, two-part questions for the whole panel. Start with Larry. What is your favorite impression scanner and your favorite model printer?
Trios for sure, and even though I don't have a carbon,
Not an iOS. Laboratory impression scanner.
laboratory impression scanner. Well, we don't scan on a regular basis impressions, although I have dabbled with it with triple trace. And I found that what I produce with a carbon C model that we get from Argen, I'm as accurate, if not more accurate, than my stone model. If I have to guess the margin, which is quite often, I'm going to do a better guess than my model tech.
Chris?
Yeah, so we've been scanning impressions for about 14 months now. We're single units only, posterior units only, and triple trays. We've gotten to scan pretty well.
You said you got a Benett scanner, right?
The Benett hybrid is what we currently have. Right now it's taken us about 4.5 minutes per case to scan those, and we certainly would like to find something a lot more productive than that. We've looked at 3Shape, we've looked at Cerama's, the Ineos X5. I'm interested in looking at other scanners while I'm here. I think that the technology is improving, so the scan times are going to get faster. Another critical part for us to sell this internally was we've got a lot of people in our organization that have been doing this for a long time. And just going completely digital was very uncomfortable for some of those people, including the guy that I work for. So,
No.
But what we decided to do was have a compromise. So we pour an extra die and scan it after it's been trimmed so that we have a validated margin to align with the impression scan. And it really helps with productivity. And we feel like we can get, we're going to have a modelless solution from a traditional impression that's pretty consistent in terms of seat time.
What are you printing with?
We have a carbon printer. We also have 2 Formlab printers. We're not printing any models though. We started out down that path to print models, And from a cost perspective and a workflow perspective, it was a lot easier to go back and pour contact models. I mean, they cost pennies versus dollars with printing, plus the time. So you've got, processing time, post-processing time with printing. So we've gone back to stone for the contact and validation models.
Anybody else want to tackle Steve's questions? Because we've got 2 questions over here too. So anybody else?
We're
Keep it short, will you?
waiting for Chris to really make sure that the scanning impressions are well, and we use carbon printers.
Carbon printers.
Carbon printer.
We got a bunch of carbons, but real quick, though, what you're looking for as far as the impression scanning, and it's not out yet, but I've seen the integrated workflow now, that new 3-shape E4, they've got it down to like a minute something, and they've integrated the die thing into that, so it's a very seamless program, because even if you got a guy trimming 2 dies, they're never going to be the same, let alone you marking one in the software and then trimming one. So it's a pretty cool workflow, and just doing that with Snapstone, it's really fast.
But keep in mind, when you're doing that, you can work in parallel. So while the model's being printed and cleaned, you're milling and sintering your restoration, and then they all kind of merge up at the same time.
So we got a gentleman back there.
It'd be interesting to have different labs in different areas and different sizes of what your remake policies are, how flexible you are with that, and what are your warranties. Because you go into sales with these doctors, you get all the different types of answers from the doctors on product, your remake, your warranties. We know we're all pretty flexible on the remake, but we have different laboratories and we have a manufacturer up here that I'm sure is affected by this too.
Well, I think the first thing you gotta remember is we don't charge enough the first time to remake it for free the second time. No.
That being said, you've never charged for a remake.
I think I'll be the first one to tell you that I take on literally every remake on a case-by-case basis. I like to have a relationship with an account with a doctor that he or she they would agree that this is possibly not a laboratory induced error, and that they're willing to work with us on that as well. If this is a phenomenal client and they do a lot of work, I like to help them out. If it's an ongoing issue, either I don't like to keep that type of client around. Again, I like to take it on a case-by-case basis from a warranty standpoint. I think we're still sticking with what we've done for 30-some years, and it's probably a 5-year warranty on most of our restorations.
That's no questions asked.
No questions asked. It's because of our due diligence in the early stages of that fabrication, that restoration. You have to follow the clinical guidelines for prep. So if all ceramic restoration requires rounded corners and no sharp line angles, then that's what we have to go with. And so we'll bring that to the doctor's attention early on and help them out as well. Again, trying to be as resourceful for them, be a partner for them, not standoffish.
Yeah, it's everybody has this issue, right? So we try to we have technical managers that evaluate every single repair or remake that comes in the laboratory. So it actually is a pretty slow process for us to get remakes and repairs to the lab. We tell our clients up front that, hey, we're going to cover you guys for 5 years. It's a 5-year warranty, no fault remake policy for us. So what that does mean, though, is that we track all of our clients and their remake percentages. If they start to creep up, then we're really kind of red flag them. We might send them some of our internal reports that we use that kind of track our remakes and say, hey, we're seeing a lot of this error. Can we help you here? And hey, we might need to charge you for the metal on this next restoration, or we might be, charging you for this custom stain. So variable, but we do say no fault remake policy for 5 years.
If we accept the case, then we accept our responsibility. We look at the impressions and things, and like Sean said, if it doesn't meet what it's supposed to, what that particular guideline is called for, but once we accept that, and we have a 5-year warranty, my understanding is that whatever you say your warranty is, you better keep that information, the script and the paperwork, because the FDA requires whatever your warranty is. So if you say a lifetime warranty, you better keep that. And then you're open to it also. You know, we have, our crowns are 5 years, depending on, we have a 3 different level system, a tiered, because it's our way of combating the $80 crowns. The doctors say they want a cheaper price, so here's our monolithic one shade crown. Well, it doesn't look as good as the other ones. Well, we can make the other ones look that good, but you're gonna pay for it. So we're very, very judicious making sure when it comes in initially, but once we accept it, we take it out. And it works well.
Yeah, we're the same way. We price in a certain amount of remakes, depending on the performance of the product, into our cost structure. And if clients are violating that, then we try to troubleshoot that. Sometimes that's offensive to customers and sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, I don't think any of us want to do stuff that we're going backwards doing. So I think it's a management issue for us in our company, and constantly looking at that and evaluating it to see where we can make improvements with customers. And if not, can we get them in products that may be better suited for what they're doing? So.
Yeah, for us, it's the same with everybody. It's situational, depending on the client. 5-year warranty on the normal stuff. We don't do a lifetime warranty. As far as the clinical guides for preps, I'd say it's been decades before I saw any preps that fit any of that criteria. So, you know, it is what it is, and you get what you get. But then again, we try to coach our doctors on some of the specifics to get better performance.
And I'm gonna be very honest, if it's 7, 8 years down the road and something happened to that, and this is a low remake dentist, a good client, as we say, what's a good dentist? Pays his bills on time, low remakes, or low remakes pays their bills. But we'll do it for now. Those type of things.
Do what you gotta do.
Exactly.
We're a lot like Nordstrom, so we'll pretty much take anything back, no questions asked. It's part of the way we want to service people. But I think the most important things with that is we track our numbers and we look at it every week and we try to get to root cause. On the one hand, we're looking at what did we do internally if this is rising up, and on the other side is what's happening externally. What are we not giving good guidance, and how can we help that number come down? Because it's whether they realize it or not, they're getting free work or not, it's costing them time and money. And so we try to help on both ends there.
Any of you return clients to the community? Getting fired?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, fair enough. Jackson, you had a question?
Yeah, it's for the nice looking guy out there, Gary.
Which one?
Thanks, honey.
You mentioned that y'all are having success with the liners.
Yes.
How are you positioning those against, like, not only Invisalign, but like say somebody like ClearCorrect, that's another more aggressive price, big name liner?
We deal with a company called Smile Shapers and Reed Nunley out of Derby Dental. And for us, we really don't do much with it. We either take an intraoral scan or we take impressions from models. So once we turn it into a STL file, we send that out. 3-4 days later, we'll get a design, and the design will include a video where it shows the beginning and it kind of morphs into, you know, what the end product will be. There's a written design protocol, and the doctors sign off on that, and then week and a half, 2 weeks later, whatever, we get all the aligners in with the models and things like that, and we send it all to the doctor. It's gone over very, very well. We introduced it, really, we started pushing it in the beginning of January, and every lab is starting to start rolling into it. The doctors really like that feature.
Yeah, 'cause my big question was that I know that the retail pricing they have, that Smile Shapers does, is about the same as the Strauman's, the ClearCorrect. And I know obviously it's better pricing than Invisalign, but I was kind of my struggle was how do we position that offering against somebody like Straumann with ClearCorrect at the same price?
See, it, obviously we can't talk pricing for antitrust,
Yeah.
but every gas station in town has the same price. I don't get it, but you know, we look at it and the doctors say, "What do I charge you?" Whatever you want. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had some doctors, they're charging $4,000 or $5,000 for a clear aligner case, you know, and obviously it costs them a lot less than that. So we don't really help them set their price, because again, whatever their fees are, whatever their costs, we do say, we hear that this, you know, this area charges this charges that, so.
I think it's a resource too, Dax.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, that people call Argen for a reason, and if you can put that under your menu of services and they trust you, it's the way to go. But they can be Strawman all day long or whatever, but they're coming to you for a product that goes. No.
That's the
Again, like you
business
said,
model. That's the business model we're rolling out is aligners through laboratories. And what we found is doctors shopping for aligners other than the two big brands out there, it's not necessarily on price. Those companies are big and they act big. I honestly believe the labs have the most trusted relationship with the doctors. And so there was, some earlier questions in there, like, how do I grow my business? How do I, what's the new and most exciting thing? You can chase everything and try to do everything yourself. And you have what's called lost opportunity cost. And things like aligners is a very easy thing that they trust getting from you that you don't have to do a lot of your own work on. And it's a good revenue stream. And now they're dealing with someone personally. And as you become more knowledgeable, you'll become a better resource for that. But it's not always price that those guys are shopping for. And they're not always happy that some of these other guys are doing direct business, going direct to consumer and things like that. So I think it's an opportunity, and a lot of the aligners coming out for laboratories to sell to the dentist are actually better. So you can have a story that they're coming better, they're coming faster, and they're coming from you, which I think is probably one of the best parts.
And I think for us, we talk a lot about business up and down relationship and recession proof. And that's why we are trying to branch out. The only thing we really say no to, doctor, are some sleep apnea stuff, some sleep appliances. We'll refer them out to someone else if they're major type things, because we don't want to get the FDA. We don't want to worry about that. And if anybody's heard Bennett's presentation on the FDA, they're coming in hard to our profession. So those type of things that we're trying to say, what can we offer that it's just a pass through? Our PFMs for us, obviously for most, are going down. So we don't worry about how do we cast and how do we do that. We send our SLMs here. So if we get slower, we talked before, we don't have to worry about laying someone out, because that hurts. That really hurts.
Fluctuating infrastructure.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the FDA part, that's one of the values that we figure, like, what's the new exciting product that Argen can deliver? Anything that's going to require a laboratory to have a 510K, we're going to try to position ourselves to where you don't have to have that 510K, and it's a pass-through. So we'll do the heavy regulatory. It's extremely expensive. You have to have a QMS system that is exhausting. It's one thing to get a 510K, and it's a whole other thing to actually manage it so you can withstand an audit, because they're two different animals. They're completely different animals. So a lot of the products that you see us coming with, we're carrying the 510K, we're managing the DHF, we're managing the quality management system, and it'll be packaged and delivered to you so you're not exposed to that.
I'm going to finish with Steve, and I'm going to ask the panelists to be fairly brief on your responses to Steve's question, and then we'll have some closing thoughts.
Megan, question for you. You had 18% growth in implants last year. That's phenomenal. So let me ask you, what are you doing as far as marketing? Or are you hosting implant study clubs or oral surgeons? What are you doing to get that growth?
I think it's two things primarily. One is partnering with the oral surgeons in our area. That's been huge for us. We've got great relationships with a lot of the implant companies too, but partnering with the oral surgeons, figuring out what they need, hosting their study clubs, coming to all their study clubs, really helping them build their referral base has been key. But the other thing too is partnering with the implant companies and letting them kind of sell us as a laboratory too. So one of the things, Argen does a great job providing implants. We also partner with the other companies though and let them kind of help us sell to the general dentists in our area. Those two things really help us.
Awesome. Thanks.
Can I add to your point? We had a regular implants that's about 30% of our business, and we've gone the route with, and we still do partner with our surgeons to activate the referral base, that kind of thing. But as we all know, implants are getting easier to place, especially with surgical guides, that type of thing. So a lot of our growth came from restorative doctors, and the big thing is they're looking for value, and we use Argen abutments. The growth of our implants, it all came from being able to provide a good quality value custom abutment to those doctors.
Does anyone here bundle price their products like implants? Have you seen an increase in your implants because you started bundling?
Especially to the restorative.
Exactly. It's like, boom, how much do I pay? I don't want, 12 different items. What's that flat fee? It's helped us bundling prices.
So we're going to wrap up and have some closing thoughts, and I'll do some formal closure at the end. But Larry, just from your standpoint, all of you, you were 2 months in, if you will, for the year. Optimistic, pessimistic, neutral in terms of
Extremely optimistic.
Yeah, same. I see a lot of really good opportunities. There's a lot of exciting developments in materials and technology that'll help us be very competitive. I'm very bullish on dentistry right now overall.
I think we're in a new golden age for the folks that want to expand their horizons and not say, I'm going to do it the same way I've been doing it for 30 years. I think we're in a golden age, and even if a recession, when it does hit, I think if we're positioning ourselves, we're going to be fine.
How can we be anything but optimistic? It's exciting times right now, really exciting times.
You say that sit next to Gary.
I know, it's my two favorite people.
Thank you. You're jealous over there, buddy.
I'm gonna tag on to what Anton said yesterday at the Cal Lab meeting. Celebrate your wins. I mean, celebrate the win, not just every day, but folks like Argen and Carvin and all of us sitting up here and all of you out there, celebrate it every day. Celebrate it now and then celebrate it in 5 years from now.
So we're extremely optimistic, and that whole celebrate the wins things comes from some internal cultural struggle that we actually have at Argen, because we came from a one product company to a very innovative company, and we were just boom, 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 one thing after the next, and we would launch this awesome thing, and we were already stressing about this next thing that we were trying to get going. And I think where Anton was going with that whole comment was, 5-6 years ago, they said, oh, there might not be labs. And I think the laboratory industry is stronger. My job for Argen is to look at the opportunities out in the industry, figure out what products that we can bring in. And I don't bring in a product unless I think it's important for the laboratories, and that the laboratories can leverage it and create new business with it. So I'm extremely optimistic. There's some really cool stuff going on. I'm usually only talking about the stuff that we're doing this year, but the things for end of 2019, 2020, I think just we're going to give laboratories such amazing tools to compete in ways they never thought they could. So very optimistic.
Well, we're literally right on time. So just want to thank the panel for your participation today and your input, and certainly the audience for you being here today on a Friday morning. Certainly want to thank the Argen team and Anton and everybody at Argen. Obviously, all know they're a phenomenal company, so we appreciate the opportunity to share with you and be with you this beginning of your weekend. So thank you. And Michael, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it. These folks took a lot of time out of their schedule. They've got a lot of knowledge, and they were always willing to share. My advice is, if you didn't get all your questions answered, reach out to them, get their contact information. I can't speak for them, but I'm sure they would love to also talk with you. So let's give them all a round of applause.